Hello, my name is Sabrina Goldlin, and I wanted to create a video about spiritual awakenings and how that a trauma that we experience as an adult or a repeat trauma that we experience as an adult can trigger our spiritual awakening. So the reason why I'm sharing this is because I had a couple comments on my channel from people who were talking about how that they were having like confusing memories come back and wondering if maybe some of their traumatic moments or experiences they've had recently have brought on the spiritual awakening that has caused them to experience synchronicities and all kinds of memories come back from past lives or this life or even future memory. And that is something that I'd love to share with you because I've experienced this myself. A couple of years ago, I went through my spiritual awakening that was took me on a journey of remembering my childhood. And it dug up repressed memories from trauma. It also dug up memories from spiritual experiences and psychic experiences I've had when I was a child that were quite fantastic. And it was always very confusing to me because I knew, like when I was researching this, when I went to different psychologists, they always knew about that trauma can come back 10, 20, 30 years later. You can suddenly have memories come back from trauma that you experienced in your childhood. And you could have repressed it all this time because that's how the subconscious mind makes sure that you're safe in the reality that you're experiencing and you're making it to adulthood. But yeah, I researched that a little bit and I understand that that's possible. But my question always was, like, how come I have trauma memories come back and also spiritual memories come back, memories of me as a child seeing my future and seeing things like literally like looking, I had visions of myself looking at a black screen and zooming in on a map. I mean, that was a time when we didn't even have cell phones yet, you know, so I had no idea what this was about, that this is going to be Google one day on my iPhone, right? Anyways, so yeah, so my question was at the time when I went through my spiritual awakening, like, what the heck's going on here, right? Nobody explained it to me, but I had memories from my past come back, trauma memories, and other memories, things that I had just forgotten about, like just plain old forgotten about, suddenly pop back in my awareness. And also stories and imagery, movies of things that I hadn't yet experienced. But clearly, when I looked at these sequences of movies and images and stories, it was clearly me experiencing it. And when I looked at myself in the mirror or at myself as that person in the story, I looked much older. Like I had gray hair and some wrinkles and stuff. I'm like, this must be like a future thing. This must be from my future. Anyways, it took me a long time to figure this out. And the reason why I like sharing this on a channel like this, because I wished at the time there was somebody out there explaining these things to me so I wouldn't have to feel so freaking crazy, right? And another reason is because largely in our Western culture, I'm from Switzerland, I live in North America now, but in our Western culture, largely spiritual awakenings aren't openly talked about, more and more now, obviously, but years ago when I grew up, it was like a hushed subject that only like certain people would talk about. It was secrets and mysticism and things people didn't really want to openly talk about because they felt like, you know, they're going to be seen as like not in their head right or something like that, right? But anyways, the Western medicine doesn't really acknowledge these things. But however, I've heard that slowly and surely some of the therapists have acknowledged spiritual awakenings, and it's a real thing people are experiencing. A lot of these people have experienced awakenings themselves and are also empaths, right? So you can start to actually find people who understand what you're going through. However, how the Western medicine has kind of tried to deal with anything to do with the mental levels is they usually intensive therapies, right? And also use of drugs and chemicals and things, right? And on the other hand, like, even if you're not doing any of this, the tendency of people who experience these things is to find refuge in alternative methods that will try to numb out things or try to make it less extreme, the experience, right? For example, they'll go with plant medicines or other kind of drugs, cigarettes and alcohol and who knows what. One of the biggest things that I received when I went through my spiritual awakening, especially in the beginning, when I had no idea like what the heck's going on here, you know, like all these visions and things and all this guidance started coming through, all of these synchronicities and all that. The biggest message I got was, don't do anything. Don't put anything in your body. Don't take anything that's toxic to the brain. No plant medicines, no alcohol, no drugs, no pharmaceuticals, nothing. Like, eat clean, not even meat. I wasn't even allowed to eat meat, okay? No toxins, nothing that in any way could somehow influence the brain or the mind. So I was told that the brain is, so they always call mental things, they call it disorder, right? It's not a disorder. It's actually, in a spiritual awakening, your brain is reordering, okay? It's reordering to be able to function in the new reality that you are going to be working from. Okay, so everything's going to change. So if you're putting toxins into your brain, obviously it's going to influence the reorder. So you have to allow the brain to heal. The brain is neuroplastic. It can heal, it can grow new neurons, new pathways, but you have to allow it to do the thing it's doing best. The only thing that I was told at the time that is okay to use is essential oils, pure grade, non-toxic essential oils that are pure, organic, therapeutic grade essential oils. And you can use them through simply putting a drop in your hand and cupping over your nose and your mouth and taking a couple deep breaths. And all it really does, it will hit the olfactory system and go right to your brain and assist the natural healing process of the brain. So it's actually the only thing that is really, when it comes to spiritual awakenings, that we really should be using, if anything. And it made a big difference for me. And this is why I'm sharing this with you, because for me, it was a life changer and a game changer. I would say my anxiety disappeared after about 6 months. And I was a completely different person after about 2 years of staying clear of toxins and only using the essential oils. And of course, self-work, right? And journaling. So another thing I wanted to talk about is something interesting that I was observing when it comes to spiritual awakenings and starting to see synchronicities and repeating numbers and signs and things, right, that just kind of pop in place. Usually we look it up and it has some kind of special message for us or some meaning, which is awesome, right? But what I found when we're in a difficult situation where we're triggered, where we feel maybe traumatized, something happened, for example, what could trigger a spiritual awakening is things like a divorce, right? If you're going through a difficult divorce, when you're being abused, when you're being narcissistically abused, right? When your reality is being questioned, when people claim that you're mentally ill and all that, and you start to question yourself, when you start to question your own reality. When you had like maybe an accident, maybe you were in a car accident, maybe you fell off the roof, whatever, it was like a trauma. When a trauma happens, a trauma to the body, a trauma to the brain, that can trigger or catalyze a spiritual awakening. Now, of course, not everybody has like severe childhood trauma that will come back, right? For me, it was severe enough that I had to work through this for 3 to 4 years to get the complete story back. So it was quite a significant experience for me. It was a very difficult experience. Took a lot of work on my part. However, I see it as a gift. And but maybe not everybody gets all the stuff back, right? But just be warned, there's the possibility that you'll discover things that you wished you didn't remember, okay? However, have the courage to look at it, have the courage to examine these memories that come back, have the courage, right? Because when you are spiritually awakening, your consciousness expands, your awareness gets bigger. And when that happens, all the things, so let's say you're walking around in your life like this, so you have narrow vision, right? And then suddenly you go through a spiritual awakening, and then your awareness expands, and suddenly there's all this other stuff around me, you know? So all the stuff that you used to push away into oblivion because you didn't want to deal with it mentally, and by the way, this is automatic. It is not that you chose not to remember, it's automatic. The subconscious does this to you, okay, to keep you safe. But when your awareness expands, all the stuff that you pushed into oblivion suddenly becomes very obvious, and the income starts popping back in your conscious awareness. It's a normal, natural process. And if you want to evolve, you have to look at it, you have to acknowledge it, you have to accept it. And if you're shying away from it, know that you can't push it away forever. You know, if you're stopping your awakening, 10 years later, you're going to go through the same thing again. Okay. So it's always better to do it now and not to push it up into like later. Don't wait for it. Do it now. Okay. That's anyway my suggestion. So the synchronicities, the subconscious mind wants to keep us safe. So the reason why, this is actually what I wanted to get to, the reason why we see all these repetitive numbers and all that is because when the subconscious activates, when you experience trauma, difficult situations, it will begin to look for things in its environment that gives it the sense of, I am safe, everything is okay, right? So it will look for familiarity, and it will look for repetitiveness. Whatever is repetitive is seen as safe. Okay, it will move to the top priority. It will always look for that. So this is why you keep seeing repetitive numbers. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have a meaning. It is just a natural process of your spiritual awakening to suddenly see things repetitively in your environment. And also when you're asking inner questions in your inner space, and you're asking questions to the universe or God, and you say, well, can you show me proof for this memory to actually be a real thing, right? Your environment will show you the proof, because your subconscious is highly intelligent, way more intelligent than conscious mind. And it will look for the truth, and it will look for the answers to your questions. And sometimes that can come in a symbol, it can come in repetitive numbers, it can come in a form as another memory to kind of complete the other memory, right? It will look for the things that match and that belong to this thing. And or it will suddenly make you run into a person that has something to do with this, and you get to have this conversation, and then suddenly the puzzle pieces fall in place, right? This is all the way that the subconscious and the superconscious works. Okay, they're your servant. It's your servant. The conscious mind is the director, and it has very limited power, but it is the director. It chooses, it says what it wants, it speaks its reality into existence through incantations, intentions, thoughts, imagery, imagination, right? And then the sub and the superconscious will make it happen. They will help you create the thing. They will help you find the answers, right? So every time you don't know something, you ask your own subconscious or superconscious for the answers. It will conspire to make things happen so that you get the answers to your questions. So always remember to go there first before you go and look all kinds of stuff up on the internet. Okay. So yeah, so we talked about the subconscious need to feel safe, repetitive numbers, the flashes of memory coming back, this life, past life, future memory. So a lot of people were saying that it was very confusing for them to have all these different memories coming back, and I addressed this already. Know that it is very confusing, you know, and the thing is, when you just go through spiritual awakening, it's hard to say, well, this belongs to this and that belongs to that, right? And this is why my suggestion is to just observe and not to act upon anything, but to journal your thoughts, journal your memories. you know, and make sure not to do this all day long, but maybe limit it. Like if you're sitting down to write about the stuff that's been coming through, limit it to 2 hours. Set your phone or a timer and make sure you're not delving into these things for too long, because there's a very high likelihood that this is really stressing you out and it's going to cause anxiety, because that's a lot of information to process all of a sudden when you're open like that, right? This is actually the reason why a lot of us go and seek medical attention, because the anxiety becomes too much, so much to handle all at once, right? It's almost impossible to get through it. So how is it possible to have future memory? This is something that I've been talking about a lot lately, openly to people. And I'm surprised how many people come up and say, I have that. This is what's happening to me, right? And it's really fantastic, because I always thought I was the only one experiencing it, because I was so scared opening up about it and talking about it that I didn't. And so I felt very alone with this. And I'm sure if you're like me, you're feeling very alone with having to experience this. Future memory, nobody believing you. But what I found out, and there's a book called Future Memory by PMH Atwater, and I recommend reading that. There's some good information in it. But that's basically the only book I've ever found about future memory. I'll be writing my own very soon. I'm very excited about that. Yeah, so future memory is actually an effect that people experience when they've had out-of-body or near-death experiences as a child. So as a child, I remember now, you know, a couple of years ago at the memory comeback of having had a near-death experience, that I actually had the experience of visiting my whole life. In that moment, I was taken by my guides. I was in this white room with this white table, and the table was like a see-through table. You could see my whole life unfolding on this table. And then there was moments where she's like, oh, go inside, like you can visit and actually look around. I'm like, really? And like I literally zoomed in like on a phone screen into the map, right? Zoomed in and kind of zoomed in, and was able to look around and experience this for a couple of moments. And all of these memories started coming back when I went through my spiritual awakening. At the time, I didn't know what I was experiencing, but I had an idea that it could be future memory. I didn't know why, because nobody ever said that it's possible to have future memory. I'm sharing this with you so that you know you're not crazy, and that future memories absolutely is a thing. And the way that you can prove it to yourself is when you just simply tell yourself that you want to be able to clue in when the future memory that you're perceiving is actually unfolding in your reality. And when you're seeing it unfold, it's like, I know this, you know, I've experienced this before. I know this, you know, it's pretty cool. It kind of feels a little bit like a déjà vu, but it's a different nuance to it. It's not exactly like a déjà vu. It feels different. It's like, oh, I already know this, but not in here. It's like, you know this in here, you know, like, oh, wow, yeah, I experienced this, or I've seen this before. And it's like you suddenly remember having had the memory of the specific event a couple of years ago. And that's the interesting thing, because yes, it is a future memory, but it's actually also a past memory. It's a memory you've had 2 years ago of a future memory that now is unfolding in the current moment. Try to follow me with this. Another thing I wanted to talk about, I already talked about the Western medicine largely does not understand the spiritual awakenings and tends to classify it as a disorder, when in actuality it is a reorder of the mind, okay? Don't let people talk you into labeling yourself with anything, okay? It's ridiculous. So how to deal with confusing memories, I kind of mentioned this already. To observe, don't engage, don't act upon it, don't react to it. Journal. So if you're afraid of somebody reading your journal, what I did in the beginning is I downloaded an app called Encrypted Notes, and I wrote in it. And as soon as you go out of it, as soon as you stop using it, right away it locks it. You need a password to get in. So that way, and you can't copy any of the information on it. You can't forward it. You can't save it anywhere else. If the app's gone, your notes are gone. All right. So it's a very safe thing if you're afraid of somebody finding your journal. Watch for conclusions and validations in your reality, like I just said. Ask yourself questions about the things that you're perceiving and ask for conclusions or validations of what you're experiencing. You'll receive it. Let things unfold naturally. So don't chase after it. Don't try make it happen. Don't try make that future memory happen. It never works, okay? It usually goes the wrong way and you're not going to believe yourself anymore. You're going to lose trust in yourself if you try to make the future memory happen now. Okay, let it unfold. Let it come to you, you know? Also, don't drug or numb yourself out. That's the worst thing you can do when you receive back a mixture of memory from the past and the future. Stay clean of any toxins, anything that can put your body into fight flight or your mind into fight flight. Stay away from it. This includes toxic people, people that are not good for you, that are not going to be congruent with your healing journey, because it is a healing journey when your brain reorders itself. So there's another thing I wanted to talk about, but I might going to create a totally different video about this just because it's a huge subject. This one is about the difference between future memory and seeing true timelines and manifesting. So the difference between future memory, timelines, and manifesting. There's a difference and there's fine nuances to it, but I'm going to share this on another video next time. And I hope you enjoyed what I was sharing and that you received something out of it. And I will talk to you soon. And thanks so much and enjoy your week.